So there's no getting around it. When you're considering the Rolex sub, you're probably also considering the Omega Seamaster. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my thoughts on the Omega Seamaster, a full review of course of this piece, and why I think it's probably a better option for you, and a few things the Omega Seamaster actually got wrong, which is probably why I disagree with a lot of people when they call it the Rolex Submariner killer. It's a fantastic watch, and it's half the price of the Rolex Submariner in 2020. But is it better value? Let's find out. But guys, before I get started, make sure you check out exquisitetimepieces.com if you're interested in this Seamaster or any other Omega piece. If you're interested in this watch, make sure you hit them up and let them know that you heard about them from Watch Collecting Strategy, and they'll hook you up over there at Exquisite Timepieces. But guys, my name is AB, I run the Watch Collecting Strategy Productions, and in today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at the Omega Seamaster. I'm going to be giving you guys the full specifications and the full review. I'm also going to be doing a little bit of a small comparison between this watch and the Submariner. If you're considering both watches and you don't know which one to choose, make sure you stay tuned for the end of the video. The first Seamaster was introduced in 1948, and since then it's been obvious that Omega didn't have a clear path for the Seamaster. They released a crazy amount of variety to suit anyone's wrist, from soccer timers to world timers, to dive watches to simple everyday watches such as the Aquaterra. Omega even dabbled in gold, titanium, and ceramic as we see here today. Now there's no arguing that the previous models were more iconic, but this one is technically better. But with that being said, the most iconic Seamaster ever produced was in 1993, the Bond Seamaster. Now the most important characteristic of that piece was the wave pattern. Now fast forward to 2012, Omega actually removed that wave pattern on the dial and they added ceramic. That same year, Rolex released their updated Submariner, which has the same formula of ceramic materials and a glossy black dial. Many believe Omega removed the wave pattern to compete directly with the Submariner. Now people had mixed opinions about removing the wave dial. On the other hand, it was iconic to the watch, so people didn't like the fact that they removed it. On the other hand, people liked the cleaner aesthetic, but in 2018, early 2019, Omega brought back the iconic wave dial. Now allow me to start off with the technical specifications. The size is in fact the biggest factor that keep many hunting for the sub. That said, stay tuned for a future review. Omega has a secret they've been hiding from us. I digress. Back to the size of the piece. You get a 42mm case with a thickness of 13.7mm. Now there is another factor to this specific dial configuration that makes the watch appear larger on the wrist. The white dial. While that doesn't make sense to many, white dials tend to make watches look larger on the wrist, while black dials kind of bring down the size to an otherwise larger piece. I had the 43.5mm titanium version, and it wore a lot smaller than this one, even though this one is only 42mm. The next and arguably most important factor is the lug-to-lug size, which means top to bottom, which in this case is 50mm. Now at 50mm it wears quite comfortably on the wrist, but with that being said, I would recommend you go try it out before pulling the trigger. I really hope Omega creates a 40mm version to finally satisfy everyone, including myself. Now the movement inside this watch is the caliber 8800. Now the 8800 has a META certification and is anti-magnetic up to 15,000 Gauss. The movement also has the coaxial escapement instead of the standard Swiss lever, which helps prolong service intervals from 3 to 5 years to approximately 10 to 15 years. This caliber also has 55 hours of power reserve, which is more than enough if this is going to be your daily piece. Now when you take a closer look is when you see the little details that Omega improved with the new Seamaster. You get raised indices that aid legibility, you get a stark white dial that has a subtle gloss to it, but nothing too overbearing. The gloss comes from the fact that the dial is made out of ceramic and has laser engraved wave patterns throughout the dial. Now Omega also kept the iconic hands. While I don't think they should change it because it's iconic to this model, the skeleton hands are definitely polarizing. You either love it or despise it. Now speaking of polarizing designs, they kept the helium escape valve, which, let's face it, almost no one needs, but again, like the hands, it's iconic to this model. Finally, the Omega Seamaster 300 has a water resistance of, well, you guessed it, 300 meters. 300 meters of water resistance is more than enough. Most people won't ever exceed 100 meters, and if this is your daily piece, 300 is definitely enough. You also get a double anti-reflective coated sapphire crystal, and finally a date at 6 o'clock, which is so subtle and so nicely done that I have no problem with it. Now allow me to share with you guys my personal experience with this piece, I've actually had a few months to wear this watch and test it out, so I can give you guys the full experience of wearing this watch. Now, the first time you ever strap it on, it definitely feels big on the wrist, but it is actually quite comfortable, especially with that thickness. The 42mm case, while it does look big, it doesn't wear too big on the wrist. It is quite comfortable. Now, with an accuracy of approximately plus 2 seconds per day in the past few months, this is definitely a movement I absolutely enjoy. Now finally, the design. The white dial makes this watch extremely versatile, and you could wear it pretty much wearing anything. Now, with the size of this piece, I haven't been dressing it up whatsoever, but it is a great everyday watch. It's a great casual watch, and having a white dial rather than the typical black dial has actually been a very nice change to the typical black dial that we usually get. Now, I've said it before, I said the Seamaster is the best alternative to the Rolex Submariner. Technically, it is better. From a technical aspect, everything about the Seamaster is better and more updated than the Submariner. However, I'm gonna take back what I said, because after wearing the Seamaster for a while, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you, it is nothing like the Submariner. Not in a bad way, and not in a good way. Because basically, the Seamaster is a completely different watch. It's very different that I cannot compare it to the Submariner. Now, I'm gonna attempt to do that in a future video, but I'm just gonna give you the short and sweet recommendation. If you're considering the sub, the Seamaster is not the greatest alternative, purely because it's just not the same watch. It does something very different on the wrist than the Submariner. It's an absolutely phenomenal watch, but if you're considering the Seamaster, consider it for what it is and not as an alternative. A fantastic everyday dive watch. But guys, what did you think about the albino Seamaster? Did you like it? What do you like about it? Let us know in the comment section below. And guys, as always, thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you in the next one.